Some Seminarians is proudly brought to you by the Vocation Office of the Archdiocese of San Antonio.
Welcome to Season 4 of Some Seminarians. I'm Luis De La Cruz.
I'm Joseph Duque.
I'm Deacon Evan Wittig.
And today we'll be talking about the virtue of temperance, one of the 4 cardinal virtues. So just to start off, I'm going to give you the catechism definition is the moral virtue that moderates the attraction of pleasures and provides balance in the use of created goods. So it's all about
balance in the universe. You may have one donut, not a dozen.
fair.
Don't be like Homer Simpson.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen that meme?
No.
Well, he's like, I don't know, he's in hell or something. It's just like a machine that just keeps feeding him donut after donut after donut.
I remember that episode where he's like just stuck and it's like a conveyor belt almost. Yeah.
So, not like that.
No.
This is something else.
No, but yeah, temperance is a super important virtue that I think is often overlooked because it's in our culture today, it's all about how much we can get.
It's instant gratification culture.
Yes.
I mean, there's just like overabundance, overstimulation of just things that you can, like, I guess, satisfy your senses with. Like, there's podcasts, there's TV shows, streaming services, Uber Eats, DoorDash, all these things that you can just, I want this now and I'll get it. So I think that temperance is very, very countercultural, especially today.
No, I agree. And you were just like on social media, because you brought that to mind. It even has like a neurological component to it. Mm-hmm. People, like, TikTok is made in such a way that I used to have TikTok and I got rid of it because I realized how addictive it is and how hard it is to, in a sense, control how much time you spend with it. Because there would be a point where, like, well, it's only about 8 seconds, or I don't know how many seconds. There's a few seconds where you're on there, and then you could, if you don't like it, you can move to the next thing. So it got to I remember one time when I had TikTok, I was bored and I just kept flipping it, and I just kept flipping faster and faster and faster. I was like, why am I flipping so fast?
Next thing you know, like 3 hours passed.
Oh, that's exactly it. That's exactly. So I was like, okay, I need to make use of my time in a healthy way. And like, you just wasted 3 hours of just sitting there, or even like for me, it would be one of the last things I would do before I fell asleep. And so I would just be there and then wake up in the morning really groggy, and I did it to myself. But there's that use of temperance versus its opposing the sin is gluttony.
Yeah.
That's a good point, Louis. The temperance can be not just what you're doing, if it's pleasure or eating or something like that, or watching TV, but also use of time, good balance in your use of time. If you spend all your time on TV, then your other parts of your life are suffering, So temperance, I think balance is good. Creative things are to help us. They're not to be something that we're addicted to. So if we have any addiction at all, we need to pray for that virtue of temperance.
Yeah, and I think that's important to make note of, is like food and watching TV and listening to music or stuff like that isn't bad, isn't evil in itself, but we need to use them in the proper way. We can't let them control us. We need to have control over them so that we don't get like sucked into them and, like you were saying, become addicted to them. And so it takes a lot of willpower and discipline. I think that's a big thing. And temperance is just self-will and growing in discipline.
Yeah. And discipline is a skill. Like, you are a musician, you play violin. Like, it takes discipline to show up to the practice room every single day.
Yeah. And consistency.
Yeah.
Just being insistent about it, just taking it one day at a time. And over time, you start to see changes, you start to see growth, differences happening.
But our culture says the opposite of just like you can have it now, all in its fullness, but that sort of discipline over time, those longer goals are sometimes more difficult to achieve in this culture, I think.
Yeah.
But something I heard you say, Deacon Evan, was like about the goodness, things were good.
Yeah.
It reminded me of Thomas Merton talked a little bit because he had an ecumenical dialogue with Buddhists, but he stated how the Buddhist perspective was that creation is evil, but the Christian Catholic perspective is God created everything good. I mean, the Bible says God created this and it was good.
Yeah.
So the difference spiritually is he stated that Buddhists detach themselves because it is evil. All creation created good, but that the monastic or the Catholic detaches themselves from things because it is good, and it needs to we need to learn how to use it in a good way, in a proper way. And so it goes to the St. Augustine's hierarchy of goods. Like everything is good that God created, but there's a hierarchy to it. What comes first? Loving God.
Yeah.
That's the first and foremost thing. And everybody has different hierarchies in some ways because we're all different, but family is very important. And then let's say you enjoy sports. Let's say you enjoy games, video games. Well, if you put video games above family or sports above family, and you're not taking care of your own family, that is an issue. That's an issue with temperance.
Even stuff like work or studying, like that many people will be like, well, the more you do of that, the better. But no, like it can get in the way of even higher goods like family, your own relationship with God. You can sacrifice your relationship with God for, no, I got to study more. I got to know more. I got to, yeah.
I felt when I first started the seminary, I felt that myself of like, so we have to have this balance formation of this human side of us, this intellectual side, which is school, the spiritual side, which is prayer. So I had my prayer life, but then I started seeing like the weight of all the readings we had to do for school. And I noticed over time within that first or second year, I was focusing so much on school that my spiritual life started to come down and my prayer life started to come down. And that had to do with that discipline and temperance of like, okay, how do I balance? We talked about balance in the...
I have the answer to that.
Oh, tell me, how do I balance?
Luis, I have a structure, and it's called PLOW. P for prayer, L for O, L for love, O for obedience, and W for work. And then I grade myself. You know, each one's worth 25 points. So if I do everything perfectly, I have 100. You'll be, glad to know that I never get 100. But it's good to have that sense of what you were talking about, the prayer, the studying would be under work. Obedience would be obeying the rules of the community. You know, we have a structure here, a structured life, which I like. I like having all those different things. Fridays is community day. We have a day of the week designed for community. So that's all. I think that gives us that balance, and they're trying to build it into us that when we are priests and out on our own, we have that discipline of those 4 dimensions of our lives. So I call it PLOW. Prayer, love, obedience, and work. And of course, if I don't love, I'm kind of, that's like an F. That's not good.
Yeah. That's such a great way, and it's such a practical way to check in with yourself to see if you're practicing that virtue.
So I don't know. Do you have any personal experience of like how temperance has helped your own life or the model of other people in the Christian world?
Well, Joseph, since I started this, I spend quiet time with the Lord, and it could be just spraying the office or having quiet time in the chapel with Jesus, and he's kind of, believe it or not, I think he talks to me, and God says, too much TV, Evan. I think it's the conscience. I'm not sure. So I used to watch a lot of TV, and when I was you guys' age, I could binge watch TV all week, and I've gotten a lot better. But that was before they had video games, and the phone was attached to the wall. But anyway.
I remember that.
I don't remember. No, I'm kidding. I do remember.
So the Lord said I was watching too much TV, so I started cutting it way back, turning it off. So I'm down to like an hour a day, and even now it's more YouTube than TV. So I'll watch some comedy or maybe a little Jordan Peterson. If I'm watching something educational, I say that's good. But entertainment, jokes, dry bar, whatever, that entertainment aspect of the media, I keep that to an hour a day.
So what this sounds like to me is almost like practicing fasting. So you're limiting some of this stuff and you're fasting from it. And I think that that's super important for temperance. But fasting can be dangerous too, I think, because you can be untemperate with fasting itself. Like, I'm going to go all in. I'm super excited. I'm
not going to eat for a whole week.
Yeah. That's exactly it. I've seen, especially when we come into the spiritual life and we come into this new relationship with Jesus, there's this fire to all in. But all in means to use other virtues like prudence. So temperance can't be alone. And if you're like, I'm going to fast for a full week without prudence, and if you're making yourself unhealthy, it's not necessary, especially if you're married or you're in charge of taking care of other people. If your health is at the expense of the people around you, that's not prudent at all. So you got to tie these virtues together. They never stand alone.
Yeah. Well, like you were saying that reminds me of this saint that I learned about back in the early church, Saint John Chrysostom. Like he was kind of the same way. He had a big conversion. I don't know if he had a conversion, but he was on fire. Like he was really wanting to do fasting and all that. So he went out into the desert, fasted like crazy, but like wrecked his health. And then he had to come back into the city, but like his health was just never the same after that. So even like these holy figures that we honor in the church, like have experiences of like being so on fire that some of them might take it too far. No,
and that's why I think one of the spiritual masters, Teresa of Avila, talks about the devil is not afraid to use good to harm the person. Because in itself, it seems like a good thing to fast, to be very, very extreme temperate on the surface level, but he's not afraid to use it to harm the person.
I like the idea, man. We talked about balance earlier, and I like St. Ignatius. I've been on one of his retreats, and he talks about the purpose of our existence is to love and serve and honor God, So created things are to help us. And so if fasting helps us, then we do it. But if we take it too far where it's hurting us, then we need to actually maybe cut it out, And we need to be indifferent to created things. We can take them or leave them. We're not addicted to anything. And that way, even fasting, if it's not healthy, you need to be willing to give that up, or at least, get back to where you're taking care of your body and giving your body what you need. Because, we are incarnational. God became a human being to show us how to be a human being. So we can use Jesus as our model. We know that he ate and drank, and I think one reason they ran out of wine because Jesus was there and his disciples drinking all the wine. And so Mary's going, they ran out of wine and it's all your fault, Jesus. And he goes, who, me? So anyway, that sense of balance, even in the spiritual life, it needs to be balanced with family and friends and relationships and things like that.
Yeah, and one of the dangers I see in fasting when trying to work in temperance is this maybe spiritual athleticism that's being trying to develop, which is not a bad thing in itself, but the extreme of it can, like we were saying, can harm the person, but it could also lead to pride, which is the opposite of humility. Because they're like, well, this is how the saints did, this is how I have to do it, and look, all these other people are not fasting like I am. And so that's a real danger, I think.
That's so easy. Well, at least for me, it's like, I don't know, like on Ash Wednesday or Good Friday, and like days where we have to fast, and then just seeing, it's such an easy temptation to just see like non-Catholics, non-Christians be like, oh man, they're not fasting. Look at them. Look at me. I'm fasting. I haven't eaten all day.
I got my ashes. You don't. But don't make an ash out of yourself. I had an interesting thing happen it was several years ago, and it was very profound, so I'll share it. So a lot of times you can do ashes after the Mass, and then they get their ashes, they leave. But liturgically, they say do it after the homily before the offertory. So we were doing it after the homily before the offertory, and I noticed I was giving people ashes, and they were leaving the church. And after I was finished with my group, I went up to the microphone. I said, please don't leave the Holy Mass. Stay for the Holy Mass, And I shared that with some people and said, well, you really shouldn't speak in anger. And I didn't think I was angry, but one of the guys that was there said, yep, you were loud. So the next day, God said something very strong to my heart. He said, Evan, you're no better than them. So we have to see ourselves as sinners. We're told to strive. We're here to strive for holiness. We're here to strive for sainthood. But we can't judge other people or think that we're better than other people. We have to maintain that humility. We will do more good for God with humility than we do with pride. I think if we're proud, we might do more harm than good.
Yeah, I think another aspect of temperance is like we don't do it because we think we're better or we're like higher in the spiritual exercises than others, but we do it because we know we need to do it, because we're not as good as we think we are, because we too often fall into intemperance, gluttony of just overusing things. So it can serve as a reminder to ourselves of just use this time, just take it easy, use things better, build more reliance and trust, dependence on God.
Yeah, and guess going off of that, one of the classes I was taking in my spirituality classes that I really loved, we covered some of this stuff with temperance and fasting and what's the whole purpose within all that. And even seeing some of the desert fathers go into the desert and work on their temperance. And it's not that things are bad in itself, it's just that we can distract ourselves from the one thing that truly matters. And so the way I say the temperance is a way to slow down to the speed of listening to God's voice. And so we're listening to how God is speaking to us, because we can get other noises in there. And then it also strengthens us, I think, for more practicing temperance in small things, strengthens us for really difficult sins that we may struggle. So I like, for example, Christopher West, he has the whole...
The theology of the body.
Yeah. He with John Paul II, and he has one of the things that I found interesting when I used to teach theology of the body to teenagers. One of the things that Christopher West said was, if you can't say no to a bag of chips, do you think you're going to say no to temptations to sex before marriage? And so you got to practice in the small things so that you can build strength for the big things as well.
So, Louis, what you're telling me now is I have to say no to a bag of chips? This is not fair.
Let your conscience guide you, Deacon Evan.
I'm going to get all beat up.
No, but starting off small, because I guess because we're both musicians over here. Oh, you
Yes,
play
I
as
play
well.
guitar.
Yes. Okay, so we you start off with the small things first, the scales, just like learning basic tone production. You don't jump into it, and little by little you start growing into this person, this musician. And I think that's how it is in the spiritual life.
Yeah, I think like what all we've been talking about is just there's a I don't know how to say it. There's just a process of how to incorporate temperance more and more into your life. You got to have a plan, I guess. It's not something that you just like improvise as you go along. You got to know what you want to do and how to do it in a healthy way.
That's a good point, Joseph. All of us are called to be saints, all of us. So what is your plan to become a saint? Do you have a plan? And I love it here because they actually, we got a plan for you, 2 years, 4 years, 6 years. But there's a plan, and every year we should be getting a little better. And we have people we check up with, formators, spiritual directors, and we tell them how we're doing. By the way, I'd recommend to anybody out there that if you find yourself that you've got a serious problem in your spiritual life or trying to discern God's will, I highly recommend, that you get a spiritual director, because they can help you. When you go to confession, it's 5 minutes, and you might get 10, but there's usually a long line. So, but a spiritual director is like a primary care physician. They know you tell them your history one time, and then you go and you just give them a little report, and they encourage you, and they'll, well, why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? And so it's a good way to help us grow, to have somebody that we're accountable to, that we have to report to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what about you, Luis? Can you think of any saints that may have practiced temperance really strongly in their lives that inspire you? Or maybe even just people in your own life, family, friends that you know?
Yeah, actually. So there's this seminarian who I met from Little Rock. His name is Joel. You remember Joel?
I remember.
Super amazing guy. He was one of the most disciplined, temperate people I knew. I'm a night owl. And so I get stuck watching, at the end of the day, the way I unwind is watching Netflix or some sort of streaming show. And it's always one episode that I tell myself, and it always turns into 3. And so it keeps playing, and I fall asleep while the show's on. But he's one of the most temperate people I met. He's very intentional with the schedule, which is something I think I would love to adopt. Is 9:30, headed to bed already, and he would be asleep before 10, and he would wake up super, I don't know if it was 4 or 5 in the morning to do a holy hour, and every single day he would do a holy hour. Wow. And at that, I do my holy hours in the evenings because I get stuck in that cycle. But I'm going to sleep late, waking up late, or struggling to wake up. But it's just very inspirational, just intention there. Mm-hmm. Do y'all have personal examples? I
do something similar to that. I go to bed early and get up early.
Oh, you're a morning person. That's
sometimes
right.
I visit Jesus at 3:30, sometimes 4:30 in the morning.
Whoa.
And then for about a half hour, and then my morning routine is divine office. I say morning prayers for the group, but I do the divine office, and then I do the rosary.
Wow.
And then we do our regular morning prayer, but that's pretty much every day. And then I also try to squeeze in divine mercy, but that's hard to do that every day because of our schedule.
Yeah.
But I visit Jesus every day and pray the rosary every day. That's pretty fixed.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah, I remember waking up and hearing some doors close in the hallway, at 3:30, 4 in the morning. Yeah.
It's not haunted. At least you know the place is not haunted.
Now I know there's holiness walking the halls.
Yes. I think for me, this is one saint that I always kind of go back to, because for me it's important to just be inspired by the lives of others.
I agree.
Technically, he's not a canonized saint yet. He's blessed only, but Carlo Acutis.
Yes, soon to be canonized.
Yeah, I know. Temperance in his life, he died when he was only 15 years old. So he was your typical, adolescent, young boy, very modern saint. And I say that because he played PlayStation. He liked the PlayStation. But he knew the temptation of just playing it all the time, having it just take over from other aspects of his life. So one thing that he did was he only allowed himself to play PlayStation 1 hour a week.
Wow,
a week.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, which is really impressive, and I don't know if I could say that for myself. But yeah, it's just
so he's a saint.
Yeah. It's just so impressive. Here we are. I don't know. This is probably in the early 2000s. So very close still to our times. This is not something that's ancient history of Middle Ages. This is something that can still be practiced here and now. Even young kids can do it. So it's possible for everyone. This is, I don't know, maybe some people listening be oh, I can't do this, it's too hard. No, it's God will give you the grace to do it. It's something that everyone can do it in their own way. You don't have to do it the same as other people. Find the way that you can practice temperance in your own life. Don't compare yourself to others. Just like, oh, they do this, they do it like this. I can't do that. Well, that's okay. Find your own way.
That's so perfect because, I mean, the way a monastic monk is called to be temperate is way different than a married couple. It's like they can't operate under the same two ways of being in that virtue. Yeah, but we're all called to holiness no matter what vocation we have in life. But I do want to address like maybe a danger that can come is because we were talking about we're all called to holiness and being disciplined and having just this structure to be able to enter. And I think that's very, very important because virtue doesn't appear just because I'm sitting here and I want it. You have to be intentional and you have to have a way to get there. But Merton would talk about, you can tell I like Merton, that oftentimes we have these secret checklists in us that like, okay, if I check this off, if I do this, maybe if I'm temperate here, then I can be a saint. But that's not how holiness operates. The way I come to understand it now is these boxes are the stance of least resistance to God's grace. So just because you check off these boxes doesn't mean that all of a sudden you're, okay, I'm perfect. But it is the path of least resistance to accepting grace, I believe. Yeah.
That's a good point. And one thing you maybe ask yourself, once a year, I mean, January might be a good time when you make your resolutions. Am I a better person today than I was a year ago? Am I getting better? Am I moving towards my goal? And then that's where that kind of helps you. But then also be open to God's surprises, because I can plan my day and God has a big laugh out of that. And the same thing can happen in your spiritual life. You can have it all mapped out and then God has a surprise for you. So be ready for that.
Amen.
Yeah.
And then just one final thought on that is like if you're moving towards your goal, what I've discovered, the best way to find that is look at your community and check in with them to see how you're moving. So if that's your spouse, your family, if it's living with other seminarians, they can tell you, and they will be the first to tell you if they enjoy being around you or not, or if like you're struggling with something, they'll check in with you, or check in with them. But check in with your community, whoever God has placed. Yeah. But no, thank you everybody out there for just sitting here with us and listening on this virtue of temperance. Please make sure to just follow us on social media on any of the platforms, and we're just happy to be here. Again, I am Luis De La Cruz.
I'm Joseph Duque.
Deacon Evan Wittig.
And thank you for joining us on Season 4 of Some Seminarians.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.